realized that the talk is in English, so I'll speak in English. To this talk entitled Exploring the Use of Digital Tools to Build Students' Vocabulary at Academic Contexts. And our presenters today are Dr. Maria Lourdes Gutierrez, who is up there, and Maria Fernanda, who is over there. Let's welcome.
Okay, so we are going to present exploring the use of digital tools to build students' vocabulary at academic context. So Maria Fernanda is working on her dissertation or thesis, and I think she is working also this dissertation with Dr. Elizabeth Grajales, who is presenting at the same time right now, so that's why we are together, but not Elizabeth who is also working on this presentation. So Fernanda, could you start, please?
Could you help me with the slides?
Of course.
Yes. Thank you. So first we're going to present to you our agenda. We're going to present the rationale for the study, or theoretical framework, or methodology, or analysis, and our partial findings. Because this is an ongoing research, we're just going to present partial findings. So this study emerged from the necessity to implementing English for academic purposes into the English curricula, because last year I had the opportunity to study in a Canadian university where I could see and hear some of the issues that the different students from different bachelors presented while using academic vocabulary. And specifically at our university, the UNACH, we include English courses in the different bachelors, but they are often focused on general English rather than discipline-specific English. So our objectives are to correlate that background knowledge that the student has on the English learning and their experiences to the possible challenges and also advantages that they may present during their academic experience, and also to explore the use of digital platforms and their perceptions to increase their vocabulary at academic context. We also have our research questions, and we're going to move into the themes that are necessary to contextualize this research. Can you help me with the next? Yeah. Thank you. So one of the themes are English for academic purposes, which Charles and Bacalar define as a branch of English for specific purposes, which is related to a specific discipline and field that the student is going to focus the language on, and is also necessary for them to achieve the academic success during their experience in an English-speaking university. We also focus on academic vocabulary, which we divided into a three-tier model. The bottom one are the high-frequency words, which are the words that we use in our daily speech, which are conversational. They are not specific to a topic. We have in the middle the general academic words that we need in a content course, but is not specific to a discipline. And at the top we have the low frequency words, because these ones are more specific. As the name says, it's technical vocabulary, which only the people who is into those fields are going to use. We also focus on how the digital platforms are going to be used in learning and teaching. And specifically talking about digital platforms, we focus mainly on YouTube, Netflix, Spotify, and TikTok. And some authors mention how after the COVID pandemic, it was necessary to implement the technology into the classroom, and this resulted in a more appealing tool to the students, especially the ones who do not have that exposure to the language. They could get that exposure and experience by using digital platforms. We also focus on the input hypothesis and the affective filter by Krashen, which basically means how the input and the content that we give to the students needs to be comprehensible to them, and also tells about how the emotions of the students are going to impact a lot on their development in their classroom. So if we present an input that is comprehensible to them and is going to stimulate positive feelings, such as using social media or digital platforms, because they are familiarized with those tools, they are going to increase their knowledge in the language, rather than using some materials that can be threatened to them, and it can cause negative feelings such as anxiety and so on. Our methodology is focused on a qualitative approach, and specifically is a case study, which Jean mentioned is going to give us a more deep understanding on a phenomenon that happened with a specific group and participants. And talking about the participants, initially we were meant to study 20 participants, and we were working with the Coordinación General de Relaciones Interinstitucionales of our university, which is the department in charge of the academic mobility. And they were so kind to give us the statistics from 2013 to 2022 of the students who do not belong to the Licenciatura en Enseñanza del Inglés, because we were focusing on the different bachelors who do not have content courses instructed in English. So we found that only 10 students in that period of time traveled to an English-speaking university. The rest of them focused mainly on Spanish-speaking ones. So we tried to contact them, but because they were using the academic accounts, they get deleted once you graduate, so we can only focus on 2 and only 1 reply. And we have some statistics here. So this doesn't mean that our university is not having academic exchanges. We have some data from the different disciplines, and we have a high amount of them, but they are focusing mainly on Spanish-speaking universities. So that's why we're focusing on the students. Yes, on the students which I get to know in my university, the University of Regina in Canada. So we were working with 8 students from different cities across Mexico. We wanted to focus only on Mexico because it's easy to compare the knowledge that they have in comparison with the rest of the students. So the age group is from 21 to 24 years old. They were in bachelors, such as business, law, design, veterinary engineering, from both private and public schools, and their proficiency level of English was from B2 to C1. With them, we worked with in-depth interviews, and we were focusing mainly on 3 topics, which were their previous knowledge and experience learning English, their use of academic English, and also their use and perceptions of digital platforms. With the interviews, we transcribed it, we codified it, and we categorized it using the inductive approach, which means that from the data that you have of the interviews, some codes and categories are going to emerge. And later, using the grounded theory method, we use those codes and categories to broaden our theoretical framework, which is going to give us that support of our theory. We have here the 12 different codes that emerge from those interviews, which we label into 4 main categories, which were English learning background, English in academic context, academic exchange, and digital platforms. So we have here some of the excerpts that emerge from those interviews. We have the common theme of background knowledge with some. We have here a part of the students who mentioned how they have a previous bilingual education since kindergarten, which means that half of the day their classes were instructed in English and the rest of the day in Spanish. And some of them mentioned also that in their bachelors, their course content materials were instructed in English and some of them in Spanish. So that was a great advantage during their academic exchange because they had a previous knowledge of the academic vocabulary that they were meant to use. But we also have some, yes, and the next one. We have some situations with some students who do not have a previous bilingual education, and they feel like they needed that support on the vocabulary related to their careers. And also we have, for example, an experience that student A faced during the academic exchange when she had to use a specific vocabulary related to addition, subtraction, and all that. And some of the native speakers and classmates of her made fun of her because she didn't know such basic words for them, but they were basic for her. And this impacted a lot on her motivation. So from these excerpts, the theme of contents Quemara emerged, which Alsami mentioned is all the background knowledge that the students is going to have on a specific field or topic that is going to help them understanding a class related to that topic. We also have some perceptions on their digital platforms usage. Which, for example, student 1 mentions that he uses a lot of Spotify and he found a podcast related to business in English. And when he had to undergo to a Cambridge certification related to business in English, he felt like this podcast helped him a lot, but it wasn't a podcast that is going to teach you vocabulary, but it's going to show you real case scenarios where he had to infer the meaning of some of the words that he didn't know at the time. And we also have student 4 who mentions that their digital platforms usage is part of their daily routine. All of the students mentioned that, but especially student 4 mentioned that she was specializing on programming, and I didn't know at the time, but programming you can only do it in English, so the material is of course only in English, and she found a lot of material on YouTube, and she mentions this gave her like a background for her experience abroad. We also have student 2 who follows an attorney on Instagram and TikTok, and this attorney records the meetings and cases with their clients, and she mentions how she picks some of the words that the attorney uses in their cases, and this made a lot of improvement for the academic experience. So from these voices, we have the theme of incidental vocabulary acquisition, which TANG defines as all the vocabulary that the students are going to incidentally learn. So this is a form of informal learning because the students are not so conscious that they are picking some of the words from those materials. So this material is not aiming to teaching because they are not searching for English teachers who are explaining a particular topic. They are searching for real representations on their disciplines, and because it's in English, they are picking incidentally some of the specialized vocabulary. So that will be all for our presentation. We have our contacts here if you want to email us and our references.
We've got plenty of time for questions or comments, so go ahead.
No questions? Come on. You also have mobility programs here, right, at the UPRO? Have you ever been part of one of these programs?
You can ask also in Spanish if you feel more comfortable with that.
Well, I have a question. Oh, you was going to ask a question.
It's not a question, it's more like a comment. So I am somebody that has learned the language in more using digital tools, for example, videos and podcasts and all of that. And this is something that I have been exposed to for, I think, a long time in my life. Like every step of my years, I've been exposed to it. So I do understand when the use of digital tools can be really important when it comes to learning, because it exposes you to a more realistic way of using the language, because it is really different when you are being taught the English that is in the classroom in comparison to what it really is. So I don't really understand that topic. I think that one of the elements that maybe could be interesting also to maybe investigate a little bit more is also how can also can affect the way of learning, because when you are exposed to that, you're not thinking about like the structures, you're only listening to how it's being produced, but you don't know like where the verb is, where the noun is, or anything like that. So maybe that could be also a topic of interest in that area.
Yeah, thank you so much. So because this is an ongoing research, we only present the part of the student perception, but we also are meant to interview some teachers who are teaching English for specific purposes in different bachelors. And yes, we were planning to see how they are implementing or not these tools to their students, and seeing how they can evaluate also their learning using these tools.
Yes. Yes, this is also more like a comment in addition to what our partner here said. I agree that this is a very interesting topic because, for example, in classrooms we're used to be surrounded by very specific vocabulary, very specific grammar structures and listening activities, etc. And sometimes it is like so plain and we don't have enough extra information. And being surrounded in by the information we get from digital tools is really helpful. At least it was really helpful for me because yes, we could revise the topics and the units throughout the book, and yes, but sometimes we need more real and specific information, and that's how we learn how we actually use the language in a real context, and that sometimes we don't really get in the book, although we get situations like imagine you're, I don't know, in the beach, imagine you're booking a room in a hotel. I mean, yes, that's you can imagine things, but at least in the internet and getting to interact with other people, even from native speaking countries, it is way more helpful for us, and I think this is a very interesting topic. Yeah, I will say that it's like additional, like from what we learn in the classroom. You couldn't focus all your knowledge you get from there only on the digital tools. Like it's an addition, it's an extra tool. So I consider it as a very interesting topic because it kind of speaks for my experience, my personal experience. So congratulations.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Some students actually mentioned what you just said, that this could be seen as an additional tool because they mentioned how the English and general English courses, of course, are not going to go so deeply onto the specific vocabulary, so they can implement these tools as a complement to their English courses. But yeah, it's a way of also being exposed to the language, and also what you mentioned about accents. They also mentioned how, for example, in TikTok, they can see real content creators who are from different parts of the world, and they give that understanding of different accents and how their way of living in general. Thank you.
Yeah, they perhaps get more significant learning, like you said, for real situations. But we need to keep in mind that we are going to be English teachers, and we need to learn also like that serious way of the language in which we need to know about the rules and all that stuff. But it's really important that we also use like common language. The language is used by the people in common lives, right? And these kind of digital tools are very important, but not only for that, because of today's generations. I think we need to go further and work more on designing activities using digital tools for you, for your generations, because we need to be updated for that. And there are consequences for teachers too, because maybe teachers like me, so we are in the middle, like working on these technologies, but we have others, like perhaps older teachers that have more problems perhaps for using it, right? So we need to work harder on this issue, right? So, but thank you so much.
I think they have.
Yeah, one more
Yes.
question.
Do you think that it could also be a disadvantage for students, for example, while using these apps like TikTok or YouTube, that they could learn very informal grammar structures or maybe offensive words, but they cannot identify if they are formal or informal, and then they use those words with academic purposes, and that could affect their grade?
Yeah, so it's also a part that needs to be studied because yes, as you say, they are giving real world representations. So of course, not everyone is going to speak in an academic way, but we were focusing on them watching content that is specialized to their discipline. So for example, one of the students mentioned they follow an attorney. So the meetings and classes that they give, of course, are going to be more into the formal part of the speech. But yeah, it can happen also that they pick some words that are not academic, but it is also important that they focus on content creators who are focusing more on the academic part of the speech.
Yeah, and keep in mind that this, like you said, complementing what the teacher does in the class. So we can use both. And that's a good moment in the class to say, look at this is more informal or this is formal. So they can learn both, but it's a part of complementing what they do in the classroom, right? We usually try to follow someone who knows about our field, right? So this is what I see sometimes, like with teaching mathematics, for example. There's specific technical vocabulary terms that we need to learn, right? So we need to see what we need, try to find out what we need, and then compare it in the class. That's the purpose. I think so. Do you want to add anything?
I just wanted to comment that you're working with a very specific population that's
Yep.
studying abroad, and they,
Yeah.
they have this immediate need to learn and use this vocabulary. In my experience, it's very different when we work with populations that are here in Mexico or other young populations, where it's very difficult to impress upon them the value of learning and using these words. They see no use for it in general, whereas the population you're working with, they feel the need. So it's even more challenging when we are in an EFL context or in an ESL context, like the one your students are in, and that's a challenge for us too. It's a challenge for my own students, many of which are many of them are here, to help to make them realize that there is importance to these words.
Yeah, but and you know what, guys? I don't know if you can see this or you figure out, but if you see this study, it makes me think about another study, a comparative study. What's going on with the students who have always studied in a private school where they have studied English all their lives? And what about our students who study in a public school with not English until they get secondary school and they have only 1 hour per day? And sometimes the teacher doesn't know how to teach English, right? So we are facing different situations, and you could see this in the study that Fernanda was presenting. We have different cases, and you see the difference between some students who have more like, well, you know that they have studied English for years in a bilingual school, but that's not the same like in a public school. So that is, well, could be another way to try to do studies, but with a comparative study in a different situation. But yeah, we could see it. How many of you here have studied in a bilingual school all your life? For example, your primary school, kindergarten, a primary or junior high, high school. Nobody here? Nobody? Okay, me neither. Right? I don't know you, Fern? Neither. Okay. So, but we are here, and we're in a VA and ELT, so we are doing this well, okay? So we can do it. The thing is just to go beyond what we see in the class sometimes. Sometimes the students expect the teacher to give everything, and that's not true because we need to learn also ourselves. And sometimes you find more useful, perhaps funnier, when you see these digital tools instead of the teachers, and that's very bad. I don't like to think about that, but that's true. Okay, but well, we're going to talk about that in another study. In the meantime, like Fernanda was mentioning, this is an ongoing study, so it is in process, and we are learning a lot through the study, right? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
de aquí y en todo alrededor de nuestra laguna las vamos a poder presenciar.